welcome back to another episode of Design on Purpose. I'm here today with Murray Ash, who has just recently written a book about intuition. What's that? Intuition, the Science of Self. Very interesting, Murray Ash. Do you want to start off maybe by telling us a little bit about your story or about what you do?
Yeah. If it's interesting for you.
Yeah.
I'm a clinical psychotherapist day by day. So I work one-on-one and with groups for therapy. And I live in Bali.
Yeah.
I've been here now 2 years, been coming here for 20 years on and off.
Mm-hmm.
My background is in many, many different fields. I studied psychology and sociology at university, and then went many different ways before I came back to therapy. So I kind of have a pretty broad, random story.
That's probably quite good though, isn't it? Because it means that you've had a lot of life experience you can bring to the table.
I figured out everything I'm not, so I can start figuring out what I am now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
And is that like, how are you currently working? Like you're doing one-on-one clients and is that and I know you studied with Gabor, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Gabor Mate.
Still.
Yeah, you're still studying with him. And I wanted to find out more about that because you see Gabor, you see his stuff out there. Like he's quite well known now, and you know I'm curious about him because is it a methodology that he uses, or is it his own methodology, or what's the basic principles of what you guys are doing in that?
Yeah, so he was an MD trained, medical doctor.
Yeah.
And he decided to kind of gift an hour a week or a couple of hours a week in the homeless clinics in Vancouver on East Hastings Street. I used to live right by there in Vancouver, and it is the kind of addiction capital of North America, pretty much. It's the whole street is just people with addictions.
Like what kind? Is it like fentanyl stuff?
Fentanyl, heroin, crack, everything
so
on
scary.
the street.
That's so scary.
But they've kind of done a different route there where it's like, look, this is going to happen. Let's create an area for it. There's needle boxes everywhere and everything. So they're kind of, it sounds a little bit farm-like to contain everyone in one area, but at the same time, everyone knows that's where that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually not dangerous. I've walked up and down that street, and as long as you're not selling or buying.
Where is that?
East Hastings Street, right by Gastown in Vancouver.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But he had this clinic there, and he would go kind of after his clinical hours and go in and just sit with people. And he developed a technique that he now calls compassionate inquiry. So it's about inquiring as to why these behaviors are arising, what they're doing for us. People tend to not look at what they're serving for us. We tend to blame and shame. Oh, I have this addiction, or I have this behavior, I have this pattern. And we always understand like what the harm is in it. But his whole technique is to look at what it's doing for you and why is that something you need to get in this way. So we kind of come back and understand what's going on, where we're at now, where we want to get to, what's getting in the way of that. Yeah. So that's the technique I study with him.
Okay, I heard him talking about his addiction to classical music or something like that.
Buying CDs of classical music specifically. It's like
CDs. Who buys CDs anyway? And what do you think, like when you're looking at these addictions and things, like what actually is an addiction, and like where is it actually coming from?
What's his definition is the closest to what I've understood through the clinical hours is basically any behavior that we repeat, regardless if it has a negative outcome, that we can't stop doing. So it's like we know what's going to happen, and we know what's going to happen is going to be detrimental to us or to somebody around us, and we continue to do it anyway. So this is the thing people don't really get. When we think of addictions, we usually think of it as substance abuse, but addictions is every single unconscious, unintuitive behavior that we do, right? It's when we're working from that tape, replaying our conditioning of what we had to develop as a child to maintain relationships. So we learn that then we go through life acting up from this little inner child who's like, oh, I have to be quiet to be loved, for example. Yeah. So then we go through life trying to be the quiet person, and it's not authentic. It's not intuitively what we really want to express. Yeah.
What is it? It's like a mask or something, like you're overcompensating or.
Yeah. Well, that if I said to you, do you think I have a good personality?
Yes.
Yeah. You might say, you know, and what are some traits you like about my personality?
Well, I think you're really funny and you're smart. I love having conversations with you.
Okay, so
You know,
funny and smart.
pretty easy going. I think I think I learn a lot when I chat with you. I feel good to be around you.
Right. So there's one part in that I would say was me.
How I feel being around you.
Yeah, the thing, how you feel being around me, there's no me doing anything to have that. Like we could sit here and have tea in silence and we'd feel okay, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know each other super well, but we've hung out a few times, had some nice conversations. All of the other things, those are all my personality coming from persona, ancient Greek for mask. Those are all adaptations that I've had to figure out to be integrated in society, to be likable. And some people hate those personalities. They don't like, you know, me making jokes might offend people in some way, and the intention's not there, but it has to match with the mass populace understanding of society.
Yeah. Okay. So then in that case, you know, our personalities developed from things that happen in your life or environment or parts of your personality, just innate DNA, or like how was it? Is it the nature or nurture? How
Persona is always nurture. We have gene expression that we inherit, right? So if there's something take on, let's look at what's going on in Israel right now. If in Palestine, if a mother is pregnant in that area on Gaza Strip, there's certain things in the development of that fetus that's preparing that child to come into the world that is existing around it right now. Meaning thicker gray matter in the brain, prefrontal cortex development to be able to process and handle more
like
stimuli,
yeah.
right? It's literally building. There's a lot going on because of the stress hormones being pumped in by my mother. So there's that, but that's not changing our genes. But what it does do is it changes the way that our genes are expressed. So that's the only part that will have any kind of genealogical adaptation through that. It's basically on that part.
That's interesting though, because I tell you what, I had this really interesting experience where just in this last year where I had to fly home to get a medical thing done, and I ended up in Adelaide. Well, I hadn't seen my grandma. She's 87. I hadn't seen her in like 20 years or something, and she's amazing. And I haven't spent any time with her at all, really. Like, you know, she's not someone I've been close to my whole life. But when I was with her and I was hanging out with her, there was all these things that she was doing that I thought I'd gotten from somewhere else. And I was watching her, like just the way she talks, or like certain afflictions, or like even the way that she processes the stuff that she likes doing. Even one day we went to the hospital, and there was a pianist like playing music there, and we both like, you know, bowed to the pianist at exactly the same time. Like we love the classics and the arts and everything. We just looked at each other and laughed. But like, how do you explain something like that?
Well, you just said something at the end. We both love the arts.
Yeah, but what about the personality and stuff? Like we're so similar.
So what was the path? Who raised you?
My mum and my dad.
And if they got that nurturing recognition, again, we can go back, right? If the way that we connect with someone is the way that our family unit works, right? Familiar, family.
Yeah.
This is a familiar behavior. My family unit is going to be very different from your family unit. This is why relationships are difficult, because we come from completely different understandings, and we have to find something. But if your mum learnt from her mum those ways, and then you were around your mum, those mannerisms, the colloquialisms that we inherit, those are always done from. It would be amazing to look at if you and your grandma and your mum, none of you had seen each other, but you had the same. That would really confuse me.
Well, what about these stories about twins? You know, you hear these stories about twins that are separated at birth and they end up...
Well, they've had the same womb experience, right?
Yeah, okay.
They've had the same birth. It could have been a traumatic birth, could have been an easy birth. They've probably had, at very, very least, the same first connection with mother before they've been adopted, or if something happened. You still have that part. You still have the same nervous system creation, basically. Yeah. So everything from there is going to be different.
Okay.
But you're also going to, you know, especially with identical twins, they're going to have a similar experience of people's feedback. You know, you're pretty, you're good looking,
Yeah,
you're
got it.
whatever, you're tall, you're strong, right? They're still going to also have that kind of feedback from the world as well. So
Yeah.
that's going to explain a lot of it. I haven't personally experienced any gene expression through different people without any contact or any similar society.
Okay, it's interesting, isn't it? Um, when you go through this compassionate inquiry, what's how does that work? Because I have seen a little bit of of some of the videos they put up, like Gabor puts up, about he's sitting there and talking to people, and it's like you're saying there, it's not about shaming the thing. Would you say it's more about understanding or?
Well, the whole reason it's called compassion inquiry is we're going to inquire without the judgment. That's the compassion is the non-judgmental inquiry, right? So I'm going to inquire into what's going on. My job, like, this is what I think people sometimes get confused with therapy. I'm not teaching anything. This is why life coaches like fuck me off sometimes. Sorry for language on the thing. I hope it's okay.
It's all good. You swear as much as you like.
I understand that people want to find their purpose and be connected and do something, but the Jay Shettys of the world, I'll call him out because I don't like what he does and all his stealing his stuff. People like that, like they bring joy to the world in ways of encouraging people to look into things. So I think that side of things is great. But there's a lot of false hope and salesy, if you do this, you'll be a better person stuff going on. They employ and educate life coaches, and there's no real compassion brought to the world. And in my experience, that can be super detrimental to people's development. Why we are in therapy in the first place, me included, I still go to my therapist every week, is because at some point we have fallen into pain and not understood how to hold that pain. That's why we're really suffering. We're never taught as children. It's so rare that anyone's taught as a child how to hold their pain. So these adaptations form for us to be able to manage and mitigate that pain, for us to reform that connection with an intimacy with our caregivers. So we go through life trying to find ways to avoid our pain. That's why people come to therapists, is so that we can be what Sat Dharam, who's Gabor's partner in Compassionate Inquiry, refers to as a safe emotional container. So you may come to me and say, I'm feeling this deep shame about this thing that happened. If there's any part of me that says, you know what, we can fix this, let's try, and I'm going to teach you what you can do, like CBT, kind of cognitive behavioral therapy direction, it's going to only add to that shame that there's something wrong about that. So let's understand it first. And if there is any shame or any anger or guilt or anything that we want to hide in that inquiry, that's also going to build up that wall again. So we have to go into it and fully accept it and understand what it's doing for us, so that we can really, really go, wow, there's this part of me that isn't actually me. And I thought it was me all along. And it's going to be there for a while. And I need to greet that with compassion when it comes up, because it's trying to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's probably trying to keep you safe in some way, right?
Trying to protect you from something, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just being witnessed, acknowledgement and understanding. And I've learnt something super profound this year too. I was thinking about compassion actually, and there's a difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is almost in judgment because you're actually putting your own lens on something of what someone's feeling or experiencing. Whereas what I've come to learn about compassion is that it's to witness something in complete neutrality without placing a judgment on it. And then I had this whole other profound realization about the words. You sound like you're into like words and language as well. But there's a reason that the word compass is in the word compassion. Because to navigate from a place of neutrality, you're not navigating or making decisions from a karmic cycle or from a wounding. Do you know what I mean?
I think what you said is amazing. And the only thing I would add to that to make it even clearer, I think that the compassion requires experience. So it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom for me. Knowledge is, we can read a book. You can read it cover to cover multiple times and understand every single word, but we don't know what that feels like to go through that. The way that becomes our wisdom instead of just our knowledge is through the experience of doing something, hence the experiential book, right?
Yeah, you've got to embody the knowledge for it to become wisdom, you know. And that's actually there's another thing. Just a few weeks ago, I wrote down on a post-it the word learnt, and I realized the word earnt is in the word learnt. So it's like, to get the knowledge or the wisdom, you actually have to earn it, you know, for it to be embodied, for you actually to have learnt the lesson.
Hence
it's an earning.
the life coach issue for me of 20-year-old life coach online doing a course and then I'm going for it. I know what to teach you now.
There's a lot of coaches out here, isn't it? It's a interesting
It's a minefield. And I think the other last thing I'll say on this is that the reason I have a problem with it, I'm very happy for anyone to do anything they're doing. It's that the harm that they can do to others in this false hope that it's going to be something. And that I think anyone giving anyone else advice is also very risky. If we're in a session, I'm never going to advise you what to do. Like ever. If I'm doing that, I have an agenda, which means that it's about me, and it's not. You're coming to me for you. I'm to sit with you and process with you and hold your hand basically while we'll go to those difficult places.
Yeah, it's pretty profound. So then, you know, just going back to the knowledge thing and the wisdom thing and embodying the knowledge into wisdom. You just talked about, like, your book here. It's not a book that's, you know, you're just reading and taking on knowledge, but it's actually a workbook, right?
It's a super annoying thing that you actually have to do with your hands. Can you imagine? No AI is allowed. You have to put a pen on the paper and write.
Oh wow, would you believe? So tell us about that, Murray. Like, what inspired the book, and can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what someone can find in there, and maybe where they get to at the end of the book?
So for me, I originally started looking at the time between therapy sessions. So clients will tend to do once a week sessions, and if not, they'll do like bi-monthly, especially for those 2-week gaps between sessions. There's like the integration phase really drops off. So everything that I do, I like to look at the science behind it as well. I'm very skeptical, and I need to understand where that's at. And then I have to combine that with my kind of wisdom part, right? So I'm trying to put those together. So I'm looking at the efficacy of therapy, and I'm trying to find ways to measure that, which we'll talk about later with my new company I'm working on.
Yeah, okay.
The reason for the book was that I was making these homeworks between sessions for clients, and I kind of realized that if I shared that homework with like a friend, I've just made this new thing up. Like one of them, I learned from one of my teachers, Lynn Traub. It's a cost and payoff sheet. So we use the cost and payoff to understand the functionality of our behaviors, the functionality of our addictions. So you can work out all those costs we're talking about, you know, family, emotion, financial, but to also write down everything it's doing for us. You know, it gets me to feel social. It gets me out of my head. So we can look at all those things and list them to help people understand. So the reason behind the book is that it's 30 days of exercises. So there's a small understanding part, a scientific or case study page. And then you flip over and we go to an experiential writing section. The reason for that is to engage the subconscious. We use a technique called free writing in the book. I say we, I don't know why I'm saying that. I wrote the book. I use
you and your higher self.
Yeah. and that's in there because basically you'll have a series of prompts specifically tackling the subject matter for the day. And once you've finished writing and you start thinking, what else shall I write? The key is to move on to the next part. So you're not actually engaging your analytical mind at all. You're reading the prompt, writing everything. And because of that subconscious, you really get to have this experience of yourself that you can then look back on.
Yeah, right. That, because I think that is a lot of the problem, is that people trying to like fix by doing, right? But it's actually in the allowing, in the expressing and the discovery where you
and
can
again, the non-judgmental part coming out.
Yeah,
you can't judge it. If the analytical mind isn't engaged, there's no judgment.
Yeah, got it.
And to answer the second part of that question, where would you get to? This is part of a larger goal for me, a larger vision, which I call the path to purpose. And I've identified through all these clinical hours that another part of that suffering is that we're suffering because we're not connected to ourselves, we're not connected to our intuitive self. And because of that, we're not actually living a purpose-led life. So many of us, like this was me And I used the experience and the analogy of me sitting inside my 911 Porsche outside my Beverly Hills house in LA crying because I was so miserable. And it's like, you know, from the outside, I was going out on dates with different models each night and doing, you know, it's like all of the things you thought would be like, that's going to be like the best life ever. And I was fucking miserable. I was so fucking miserable. And every bit of money I'd made through my property company I had over a decade ago, a creative agency out in LA, and they were like very, very profitable businesses. I put all of that money into my education. I've been studying this stuff and going to seminars and learning from the best teachers and traveling the world. I've been 60 countries around the world trying to find the best teachers, all to get all of this wisdom and experiential stuff to understand myself. And I'd always looked at it as like the side thing, right? So I have to be this, this, and this. I have to be wealthy. I have to be a leader in some company. I have to do all these things and have a big house. And then there'll be time for my work, you know, my self-work, my psychology, my understanding, my psychotherapy. And once I took that leap of faith, and it took Gabor on the course basically saying, you know, the first few weeks that were in there, right, you guys need to now go and start practicing this. Because again, you can't just study with us. We can't have our meetings and then you're just done. You have to do your clinical hours, and we have to have hundreds of clinical hours. You know, it was over 1,000 hours in the 1 year course. So you can imagine how many hours a day that is of studying, doing meetings, practicing, doing your practicums, all of that, so that we can really, really feel what it feels like to do it all. And that was me realizing that I had been off my path to purpose. You know, I'd been on some other path that I was trying that was maybe for someone else. And I went this way, and then this one was somewhere else. And there's only one quote in the book, and it's again from Compassionate Inquiry Circle that they shared from A.H. Almas. And it I think I've said this on pretty much every podcast I've been on because I just love it so much. But it's like, what if there's some part of you that loves you so much that it'll go to great lengths to make you suffer every time you basically go away from yourself? Because what else can it do, because it loves you so much? And I think that resonated so highly with me, because it's true. Every time we do something that's not for us, we have immense suffering. But a lot of judgment is, you know, I'm depressed or I'm sad or this thing's not working out. But the flip side of that is it's really not allowing us to go that way anymore. You know, at the far extreme, somebody will get sick, or somebody will lose their job, or a relationship will end. But it's all bringing us back to, this wasn't the right way to go for us. We have to look at where it's pointing us. And to be with that, for somebody who's very scientific and skeptical like me, to witness God or something is a big deal, you know?
Yeah, they say that, right? It's a redirect, right? And that's so true. But did you find that when you started on this path and you were back in alignment with your purpose? I mean, what happened to your Porsche, by the way?
Oh, it's gone.
Okay.
Sold. Went to New York.
Okay. So when you went there, when you started getting on that path and you started taking that more serious as the path you were taking, did you notice things opening up? Like, did things start flowing better for you?
It was the first time in my entire life I genuinely felt happiness. That was the biggest thing. I literally woke up in the morning and I was like, fucking yes, I get to do this again today. And I would open my iPad and sit at the coffee shop and just watch all of the videos and then fill out all the clinicals, like doing everything. And I was so excited to work with someone again and be like, okay, what am I going to learn about? Because this is the racket that's been the laughing stock of all, especially analytical psychologists. You guys are paying us as a client for us to learn about ourselves. I am learning myself the whole time. Like, you're getting your stuff too, but it's like double down for us, you know?
Yeah. No, it's true. I actually did this kind of group therapy sessions, actually. Like, it was with the Mana movement, and you know, you would go through and you would tell these stories, you know, things that happen in your life, and you would just be sitting with someone. But the weirdest thing was that whoever you were paired with was like the perfect pair, and they would be explaining their thing to you, and you would start seeing you and your relationships and your family stuff in that, and without you even going into your thing, you would get so much, and you could do so much healing through these kind of realizations of actually just being in witness to another. There's
some of the seminars we did these seminars, like 3-day events where we go through different subject matter. And the very first one I went to was the communications. seminar, and the teacher of that ended up being my therapist and guide. Basically, I guess I put it that way because it was also, he was helping me choose which education to do. He was a New York University communications educator, and his name was Joseph, and him and his wife Lynn, who's now my therapist, they would do this workshop where we do this thing called milling, and you basically walk around completely random, no pattern, no pathway. There's no verbal communication allowed. There's no physical communication allowed. And at some point they'll say, now pick your partner and sit down. And you're like, but wait, how do I pick someone? I can't be like, do you want to, all of that's off. And you just kind of find someone and sit down, and then you're next to someone. But it was exactly what you said. And we did this practice that there's a part on here that I use it. There's a grief letter, and you have all these prompts again, and we're writing it out, and then they had us swap it with the partner, and they read it back to us. And both of us had written this thing to our mums. Both of us had the exact same, oh my God, this was so painful for me watching you go through this as a kid. And it was like, it was so hard to even read it. I was crying, he was crying, and then we'd swap. And it exactly what you said. We are seeking out that very thing. And that's why I love relationships. I think I've been a serial relationship person. I've had my long chunks of single time, and they've been very, very few and far between. I have these quite long relationships, and I am trying to understand why. And I think, again, something Gabor said, all of our trauma happens in relationships. So what better way to heal it than in relationship? And we can have that in a relationship with a therapist, or with a spiritual relationship, or we can do it with our partner. And you know how triggering it is to have a partner. Like, all of your shit is going to come up. It's going to be absolute, your most imagined hell and your best heaven together. That's what those are, those relationships. And I've noticed the patterns of ones I've had. I've had very, very stable ones, and I'm kind of in there like, okay, there's not much learning right now. What's going to happen? And then I'll go for an absolute crazy, and I'm like, well, that was a little bit nuts. I really, really had to figure something out for myself. Learning. Yeah, let's find somewhere in the middle, right? And it's that pattern, but it's that quest for understanding myself, and I see that in you clearly. Like it's having these conversations that fascinates me. I'm just like a magnet for people like us. I'm like, come tell me weird stuff. What's happened? What do you think about stuff?
Yeah. It is funny, that, isn't it? Like in relationship, like just exactly what you're saying. Where all the things come up. But I think, do you think that you can find relationship or partnership where you can actually work on that stuff together? Have you been in something like that where you've been a team? It's you against the thing, not each other, or not necessarily against the thing, but you in understanding the things and each other's woundings and navigating those together. Like, have you ever experienced that?
I have experienced that. The first one of those was one of the relationships that I actually was the fuck up in, because I think that I didn't understand my place in a relationship if we were both doing our work and supporting each other, because I was like, well, what need do you have for me, mister? I want to like figure everything out and do. So that one was like, I just dipped out basically. And then I was like, why did I leave? This was awesome. And then it was just done, So again, that thing I do see with couples when I do couples therapy, it's the make or break thing. And it's exactly what you said. Can we both work on this together? Because there are going to be things that come up. Even for you and I, we like continue a friendship and we grow closer. Something's going to come up that affects us even in a friendship. And it's all about how can we deal with that? We might have completely different ideals. We might have completely different ways to figure this out. But can we be appreciative of each other's way and work together? It's like a conflict resolution tactic. One of them is collaboration, right? And I think that's what I look for in couples when they come and there's a disagreement. I try to help them find the collaboration in this and what it's showing about each of them. Why their belief is this? Why their belief is this? And is there a mutual ground to collaborate?
Yeah, because and there's something fractal about that too, isn't it? Because it's like within relationship one-on-one, and then there's communities, and then you go bigger, then there's countries, then there's, so it's like this work is really not just, well, it's like, I think there was a book over there somewhere where we both called it out, World Peace Lies Within. Mm-hmm. It's just like how much of what's going on in the world right now is actually each individual person not dealing with their own shit.
I have clients like that. I have very, very wealthy clients that are freaked out either about, Biden being in or Trump being in. And at some point, I just have to say, like, who the fuck are you? Are you perfect? Because, look, I don't, I tend to steer away from anyone that wants to be in control of a big thing, because there's usually something in there anyway. I'm very distrusting of hyper authoritarianism, like whatever it is. If I'm gonna run a country, or I'm gonna be like the chief educator of this thing, I'm always like, okay, wait, why? That's my first question. But with these people, they're in extreme suffering about, oh my God, this person's going to ruin this thing, or this isn't going to work out anymore, or this human rights violation is going to happen. And then I asked them, what are you doing for you? Like, why are you focusing so much on all of that? Like, what if we turn that camera around and focus on us right now? How are you showing up for people? Are you being supportive? Are you being collaborative? It really is that, right?
This Indigenous guy told me this thing once, and he said, for every finger you point, you have 3 pointing back at you. You've seen that, right?
Yeah, that's good.
And it's true. Yeah, I see a lot of that, and there's been a lot of these crazies, like some of the stuff that you're talking about there, like you see all of this just manic, like after the election and everything like that, people just losing it, videos like crying, like just being maniacs. Like it's just, it feels like there's just this huge mental health epidemic that we're living in. It's like, and you have to wonder, like, what is it? Is it manufactured? Is it like, has there been an active, a role or intention to destroy the fabric of society? Is it the fact that we're living in this really artificial environment and we're lacking community and connection? Like I do wonder about that.
We all live in a very, very sick society. The only way to function in a sick society is to be sick yourself. That's it. Like you said it. It's, you look at the way society's set up, and it isn't set up to be collaborative. It's set up to be competitive. Do
you think that's changing though? I feel like there's a shift in that in some way in terms of the collaboration. And
in what way do you see the shift?
Well, I mean, I think the way that the world's going, like in terms of, even the technological advancement, I mean, there's pros and cons for it. It gives a lot of freedom, and but there's a different generation coming through with, that want more freedom. They want to see the world and have peace, and you see young tech entrepreneurs just building like one person businesses, or it's not, and then collaborating with others. Like I am seeing a bit of that. So I do wonder about that.
I very much hope so. I mean, we go through phases of power shifts in society, right? And I think everyone, I mean, I have a British and American passport, okay? The UK, I will say probably the friendliest people I've ever, especially in Scotland, where my family's from.
I love the Scots.
Unbelievably friendly. You go to a stranger, oh, when you come in and have something, please take something, have some juice, it's just something. And then the far end of that is being in the US, where, I like to look at the way people drive as a great judgment of society. So you drive into LA, and it's people merging and pushing in and trying to make sure that they force their way. And in the UK, it's like kind of, please after you, please you go ahead. And we have these, not so much in London, but, especially once you get out to the country and stuff. And I think feeling into how that goes with society, it tells you a lot about people, how important they feel they are, whether they do have empathy at very, very least, or have even transcended that to compassion of understanding that other people may want to go somewhere and do something. And like there's a lot of great things about the US. I'm not shitting on it completely, but there's a lot of that cultural thing that we're talking about, where people have got so sick of this. There's an elite that are in control, and I can work my ass off and still just basically make my ends meet at the end of each month. That's crazy to me. And I think
people are probably just tired, and they just want to get home after a really hard day.
But that's also part of it.
Yeah,
that they want. It's part of a social control in that way, right? If we keep people so tired and on the rat race, they're not going to have time to think about these bigger things.
Yeah.
On that, I would like to mention to everyone listening, the biggest game changer in my life, more than any psychedelic experience I've ever had, has been Vipassana meditation. Everyone, I very rarely say this, everyone, always, any, but I really believe that everyone can benefit from going to do a 10-day Vipassana sit, because it's the antithesis of everything we're talking about. It's that sick society is now gone. You're meditating 14 to 16 hours a day. You're, as an old student like me, 1 meal a day. As a new student, you get 2 meals a day. But you're just being with the truth of what is what Vipassana means. It's the truth of what is, or as things are, anicca. And it's sitting with, experiencing yourself and the world without that system running in place. Everything is taken care of for you, so the ego is dissolved, because you can't be like, well, I bought this food, I cleaned my room. It's like you're told where to be at what time. You have your food prepared for you by the generosity of someone. Even your place in the course is paid for by the donation of whoever came before you. That view of society is very, very appealing to me. So much so that I got worried I'd want to stay. I've done 10 days now, and I was like, fuck, maybe I'll do the long sit now, like 3 or 4 months.
You'll never be on a podcast again.
Yeah,
You'll
that's
just be
it.
silent. I've heard some really funny stories about Vipassana as well, just going off the judgment thing. You know, I haven't done it myself. I've actually checked in. There's a place here that does Vipassana, silent
Most
retreat.
countries will have them, yeah.
Yeah, so I've actually, I'd actually like to do it. But I've heard some funny things, like when you're in the Vipassana and you start building these personalities for the people in the room, and you think that they're like got a particular accent, or there's some type of person, or, you know, and your mind starts getting very, very busy at creating these stories about people.
Yeah.
And then you sit down with them at the end,
Completely
and they're
different
just
person.
like a completely different person.
That's the way that our mind shapes the world, right? It's how we look at everything is from our mind. You know, I'd be sat there, you know, for hours in the group sits, and I'd be like, oh, there's the farty guy over there. There's sniffles over here. This person keeps bringing their fucking alarm clock in. I can hear it ticking. It's driving me nuts. What an asshole, right? And just building this, and I'm like, fuck, come back to the breath. Come back to the breath. Okay, and then you hear the tick, tick, tick on the clock. Hey, that fucking prick. He must be such an ass, you know. And then you meet him afterwards, and he's just yeah. It's just it really is that. But that's how we go through life, and we don't. Again, coming back to the car analogy, like especially when we're inside the car, it's one step even further removed of being able to be with, oh, there's another human being there who's probably going to try and get home to their kids, or maybe they've got a family who's sick, or they're really, really struggling to make money right now, and we're just trying to push it in front of them, and then we're like, why are they doing, you know?
Yeah, totally. So okay, Mariash. So what?
I love the full name every time.
Yeah, I love your name. I just think it's the best name. I think you need to work that. It's very, very, very good name. So then, what is intuition?
Intuition, I see as the capital S self. So if you read the book, the self will be spelt different ways. Capital S self being the authentic self. Small s self is the persona, the implied, understood, believed self. Intuition is that capital S self that has that that understanding. And the author Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote a book called Blink, which I definitely would recommend. He talks about a thing called thin slicing. And thin slicing is when we walk into a room. It's that first 5 or 10 seconds where we get a feel of the room and the people in it, and we go, oh fuck, somebody's fighting in this room. You know, we don't know why. It's quiet, but we just know something's off. That's like built into all of us for survival, for nurture, for everything, that we can figure out, you know, danger, safety, a very, very low level. And in society that becomes a lot more prominent and important. But what we're told to do in society is to rationalize that feeling and go, there's no way that I could walk in this room and be like, there's people who've been fighting in here. It must be something to do with me. So maybe if I do X, Y, Z, I can make this room fit right. Intuition is that trusting, that first initial thing. You know, it's when we're driving around a corner and we're like, fuck, I feel like something bad's going to happen. And we just kind of back off the throttle a little bit. And the next thing, a truck comes around, right? It's just that feeling of like, and we're so disconnected from it. We're so told it's not scientific. We need to be away from that. And it never does us disservice.
Does everybody have intuition?
Everyone has an authentic self.
Yeah.
Everyone. This is the thing, when people come to me and they say, you know, I'm an angry person. I'm like, okay, let's look at that. That's a pretty big belief that you have there. I'm an angry person. I have anger issues. Were you born angry? No. No child comes out being, even Hitler came out as a nice child, It's what happened to him, or what he made what happened to him mean, is the reality of the trauma.
Oh, just on that though, like just what you're saying, it's the meaning you give to the experience, right? Because you talk about, Jordan Peterson talks about, for example, changing the narrative or rewriting the narrative
I'm
to change.
super not big fan of Jordan Peterson, and I used to be in a really big way. I was super into him.
Yeah.
And the more, because of my time with people, I've realized how far away from healing that modality is that he has.
So when you talk about the meaning, though, what is there some kind of truth in what he's saying there, or what do you see?
So I mean, that is again more CBT kind of style.
Okay.
It's like, let's look at this situation and understand what we're doing, and then try and reframe it. It's a reframing technique, which can be really good for when I was a kid. I used to have this recurring nightmare of wolves coming into the room. And it was because my brother's dad was super violent. He threatened to kill me. He would teach me boxing, but break my lip open and everything when I was like 7 years old. Okay, so I was fucking terrified, and I didn't want to get up in the night to go to the bathroom. And I kept having this reoccurring dream of these wolves coming in, and they would shred me apart. Right? I'd have this dream. And I went to see a cognitive behavioral therapist. They put up an easel for me and said, paint the scene. And something at that age, when we're super susceptible and open to new ideas, I was painting the scene and everything, and we had this nice talk. And what came out of it was, she said, when these wolves come tonight, because they are going to come, what if you invite them to your bed and make friends with them? And because I was so open, and I had that, intuitively, again, my gut feeling was like, yeah, why not? That would be way nicer than being eaten, right? Like, I'll invite them. And I did, and I never had that dream again. And they would still come each night, and they would come to the bottom of my bed and curl up, and they would keep me safe. So that cognitive behavioral therapy side of things is really good for that sort of stuff. Just as is hypnotherapy. Hypnosis is really, like, my teacher Lynn is a clinical hypnotherapist as well, and she's helped me massively. But the problem with CBT and Jordan Peterson's way of looking at things with people is it relies on that judgment again. It relies on the shame to remind you that you need to make a change.
Okay.
And I can do that all day, right? It's me going surfing, and a big wave comes and goes, come on, stop being such a fucking scaredy. Like, get on that big wave. You're here to surf. Do it. I'll do it. I'll surf the big wave. But why am I being so mean to myself? Why am I yelling? Am I having fun? Am I enjoying myself? Or am I doing that because I'm forcing myself? And if there's another way of coming at that, would be to look at that wave and go, wow, I'm really scared of this. Where did that come from? Well, it's a dangerous situation. What's my fear here? Can I be with that? Let's look at what that's doing for me. The fear is keeping me safe from drowning. The fear is doing this. The fear's still going to be there. Like Ram Dass always says, I've done all of this work for the last 50 years. I've, been a psychologist. I've taken every LSD mushroom that is available, and none of my neuroses have gone away. But he said the difference is that instead of them being, an 11 out of 10, they're now like a 1. And I greet them and go, oh, there's that thing again. Thanks, but I don't need you. For me, that's a lot healthier. And it also allows somebody to be with what is. Those things are formed, they're there. Allows them to be with it without the judgment, and it's the judgment that's causing the suffering. The belief of being angry, no, there's anger present, and I'm using that to maintain a boundary to keep me safe.
Yeah.
Right? The judgment isn't there anymore. That's why I have a problem with the way he does things, especially with the kid stuff about, a kid should go sit on a step until they've finished having their tantrum. And then when they've learned to be good, they should come back and no, don't do that again, or you have to go sit on a step on your own. And it's causing the very trauma that caused that reaction.
You're not getting to the root of why the kid's having
Not
the tantrum
even,
or being in witness
there's that,
to it.
but it's encouraging that traumatic response.
Yeah, okay.
The autonomic nervous system is firing that same fight flight system again. So we're never going to be able to heal it. The more times we do that, that becomes then the complex trauma, where it means it's the same thing being done over and over and over again. PTSD is one thing. There was one big traumatic event. Complex PTSD is that traumatic event has happened time and time and time again. So now I'm living that as a reality. And that's what that kind of mentality and that kind of work does to people. It keeps teaching them that shame is there, that shame is there, that shame is there. You go there, you do this, you do this. And I'm super not about it. I haven't seen it work. Otherwise, we could have read all his books and done his course and everything, and we'd be all okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting. It's a what that you're making some valid, some points.
By the way,
and
he's super
exploration.
smart. I'm really interested in it. I really, really am interested in what he has to say. I just don't believe it's the most loving thing that we can do for people.
No, I got it. So then what would you say is the difference between intuition and being impulsive? And how do you tell the difference if you're doing something from a place of fear, impulsive, or you think it's an intuition? How do you tell the difference?
So again, I'm going to have to borrow from a few of my teachers for this one. What I heard in your question is how do you tell if you're being reactive or authentic? When we look at intuition, the word responsible has to come out. And I love that word. Again, Satdaram Kaur, Gabor Mate in our Compassionate Inquiry course, we use responsibility as a huge part. And a lot of people take responsibility as accountability. That was my fault, putting fault on it. But responsibility I like to look at as the ability to respond. So you might say something to me that triggers me, right? You said something nice about my name. If you instead said, oh, Murray's, I hate that name. It's the shittest name I've ever heard, right? If I was worried about my name and I was like, oh God, I'm really self-conscious about my name, there might be a part of me that wants to stop that straight away that comes up, right? That reactive part is the part that's going to say, oh, you're fucking stupid, like say something aggressive and then leave. The responsibility is recognizing still, because it always starts with the feeling, right? You say, I don't like your name. I get like a little pain in my belly or something. It's like, oh, there's some pressure there. That then goes up to my head and I'm like, oh, that's anger. Okay, so I'm naming it as anger. That's the first step on our process of, here we go. There's the anger. And then my head wants to make sense of why the anger is present so it can figure out if we're safe or not. So then that will go, you are angry because she said something bad about you. So she's a bad person. This all happens in like a millisecond. So the reactive part goes to that head part and goes, fuck off. It does. It's that part. It's when we're driving, like you fucking, the thing we're talking about. The responsibility is feeling that feeling and going, oh, there's anger present. And then going, what am I making that mean? It's being able to take that time so we can actually respond. It's that ability.
So is intuition, I know you've described it as self, the authentic self, right? Or was it?
Yeah.
But is it emotional intelligence? Because that seems something separate to self. What's the difference between what you've just mentioned, and emotional intelligence? Is emotional intelligence being better at responding?
Exactly what you said. The emotional intelligence is that process I just talked about. Are we emotionally aware enough that we can witness that feeling? The feeling is always valid, right? If I have pain in my back, you say something and you'll see people when they get stressed, their shoulders go up, or if they're in shame, they drop down. That somatic experience, or that bodily response is always valid. That's real. But the naming of the emotion is already the first step of like, I'm using my head to understand this.
Yeah.
And then the perception is always not that. So the emotional intelligence is having that pause in that process, in that kind of 3-step process, and say, actually, wait, this is me because I have, a fear about my name or embarrassed about my name. People can't pronounce it or spell it. And she's just shown me that. So the emotional intelligence part is different from the intuition. The intuition is the belly feeling, oh, something about here. The intuition is telling me there's something I can learn here. And you see the difference in that from me saying, oh, fuck you for saying that, or me going, thank you for showing me that I still have something to work on. That's my responsibility kicking in, to allow that intuition to be a teacher instead of a protector.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reaction is always a protector. The head always protects, the heart always connects. That's the cheesy sentence that we can use.
Got it. And you touched a little bit there on the body side of things, like holding this in your body.
Dr. Peter Levine, thank you for your somatic experiencing that you taught me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's he's great with that.
I think I've heard of this guy, Peter Levine.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So, because I'm really into the myofascial stuff, you know, like I'm obsessed. I talk about this on like every podcast pretty much, but it's like I had a pretty bad like kyphosis, and, you know, my posture's, it's getting there. I'm starting to, you know, I'm looking at things as a system, and a lot of the work I've been doing is myofascial release, you know, because you hold these things in your fascia. And I know you like to exercise, you know, I hang out with you at the gym. So how do you, and I know you're into the barefoot stuff and the, you know, all of that. So how do those things go together? You know, can you does one feed into the other? Can you work on both of them simultaneously to help?
I think that is probably not my expertise area. I've experienced that movement helps massively. I do a lot of work with somatic. So if we are doing a session, and I hope this doesn't sound creepy, I'll be watching your body as we do it, especially when we do groundings at the beginning, or I'm always listening for either a change in pitch of your voice, your breathing pattern shifting, or something in your body changing. So as we're talking about things and I'm asking you questions, you know, when was the first time you experienced this feeling? And they go back and you know, what might another child be making that mean if they're in that situation? And you see all of a sudden the shoulders go up and the breath changes.
I'm gonna be so careful how I'm sitting now with you.
But that's the thing, to look at it. And again, I have to credit Joseph Maldonado, my teacher, for this. His years of communication practice was, you know, 99% of communication is nonverbal. And I lived with him and my therapist teacher now, Lynn, for 7 months. And her daughter, Danette, who is also a compassionate inquiry practitioner.
Whereabouts was that?
That was in Arizona. It was in Vancouver first and then Arizona. So you can imagine being in a therapy situation with these two experts, you know, authors and everything, all day, every day for 7 months with no breaks. So it was literally like, why did you decide to sit at that chair in the table today? Not in a judgmental way, but just like a curious, like, that's interesting. Why did you wear that t-shirt that has that writing on it today? What does that mean for you? When you said that, why did you say that? It's questioning everything, and it gets fucking infuriating.
No wonder you like Vipassana.
Yeah, of course.
Just be left in peace.
Well, it's like, it's almost the same thing, but with myself in that moment, right?
Yeah, which is worse, right?
I love it because once the judgment's away from it, it's just fascinating to me. It really is. Again, the science of self for me is like, what is that science of understanding? Having a science degree, it's that pattern. Anything we wrote in our dissertation, we had to have done in a lab. So if I'm going to write something about this, I have to have been able to back that up with a study or an experiment that I've done. It has to be. That's the way I look at it.
It's like what you've done there is really amazing, because you've really immersed yourself, right, in this. Like, once you've made this decision that this was your path, it sounds like you've just gone for it.
And the thing was, it's been my path always. It's like I was a weird kid. I got really lucky with my mum. She had a master's of psychology degree, and again, never went into that. She went into a different healthcare area. But she was, you know, from day one, having me talk to people and figure out things when things came up, asking the right questions. Super grateful for her. And I did Reiki level 2 when I was 12 years old, right after my dad passed away. It was my mum and I's like bonding thing. So I was already getting into body work at that point. Like, as a 12-year-old, it's just not what people are interested in. And then I was playing rugby from the age of 6. I was boxing, I was surfing, I was doing all the kind of like traditional man, like, oh, let's go do it. And then I'd be like, so how's everyone feeling? You know, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, the rugby photos there, everyone's sat all big and I'm just there going, you know, it's just, I didn't really know where to fit in with that. But that was because it had always been my path, but I didn't know it was okay for it to be my path. Do you know what I mean? Again, like, the judgment stopped me doing, and I wish I'd done this. As part of me wishes I'd started doing this full time, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have been able to have done it like you do.
It had to be this way. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in England. Yeah.
Okay.
And at like 9.
But you've got an Aussie accent.
I have not got an Aussie accent.
Really? Am I missing?
No, if I had an Aussie accent, I'd be like this, the title of it.
I thought you were Australian.
I know. People get it right. So this is why my accent is not very, very English. 18, I started traveling, and I fucking hated being in the Midlands of England at university so much that literally every time I'd hand in a dissertation at the end of the year, I'd have a ticket booked to fuck off for 6 months or 5 months. We'd get massive summer vacations in England to travel the world. So I was always around these different cultures, And then I dated multiple women from Vancouver, because having an English accent means you can get women very easily if you're in Vancouver for some reason. I still don't understand it to this day. To me, I sound like a weird Harry Potter thing. It's just, I don't know. I think I feel bad for them. It was like, you know, I'm not really that special, but I'll take it, you know?
I think you're pretty special.
Oh, thanks. But it was that, and then moving to the US. I lived in the US for almost 10 years, and ordering, what do you call this?
What do you mean?
What's in this glass?
Water.
Yeah. You say that, I ain't going to get anything. What?
Oh,
What?
like in
what?
America, you have to say like,
oh my God,
water.
dude. My ex-wife, she would literally hold my
water?
hand, because I'd be like, you fucking, they'd be like, oh, you mean water? And I was like, no, I don't. You're speaking my language. Vegemite sandwich, I'm not doing that. Right? But you say you're speaking English and you don't understand. And it was like, I had to dull down my English so that I could be understood.
Okay.
So my non-regional diction is now kind of very muddy, I think. Because I'm from Kent, so that's kind of like where we speak the Queen's English, you know?
Okay, proper.
Yeah. But I was the poor kid in Kent. I was in a very wealthy area and I was the poor kid. So it was like a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting life. You've done a lot of stuff. How would somebody, you know, if they wanted to do some compassionate inquiry, how do they go about getting in touch with a practitioner? Or
They should go to Compassionate Inquiry website. I think it's .org, might be .com. But if you just search Compassionate Inquiry, a load of us, like once we're certified practitioners, our names are all on the list, and you can go through and there's a profile and you can kind of pick who resonates with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was the thing you were talking about there, Murray, about these companies that you're starting?
Oh yeah.
I know you've been making a lot of content. Is that what
that's
for?
The start of that. So
tell us
again,
about that.
Integrating science to have more measurable, efficacious work for people. I've identified from being on the client side of therapy for so many years, and now being a practitioner, there's several shortfalls, like not because something doesn't work, but just because it could be better, right? We should always be looking at how we can make things better. In my mind, that's really part of our purpose of being here. And you know, we have to make a living as practitioners, and the world isn't cheap, even living in Bali. We have to charge a certain amount for a session. That immediately cuts out a huge amount of people that can afford to add that to their already, you know, growing weekly, monthly costs. So financial inaccessibility is a huge thing. I'm just saying this as a preface of the company. Efficacious understanding of therapy is difficult. You wake up with yourself all day, you're with yourself, you fall asleep with yourself, you see each other, you see yourself constantly. It's very hard to see changes. You know, I think that's part of the gym we like, right? We can go and see, I started here, and I can take a picture, and then, you know, in 4 months I'm like, oh, my abs are back, right? That's quite an easy switch to see, but it's very hard to see that on an emotional, you know, psychological level. Relationships change, people grow, they either grow together, they grow apart. That's also a difficult thing to measure, because what if we actually were both growing, but we grew to our more intuitive, authentic selves, and we realize that doesn't work? Or does it mean that, you know, I've done something wrong? So my whole business model is to look at what measurability is there in this. Can we use self-reporting? Can we use biometrics? Can we do group work so that we have the mirroring and feedback from others in a compassionate, safe space? So I've taken the traditional therapy model, and I like to say it's therapy reimagined. So you'll still have your one-to-one therapy sessions, preferably weekly, but bi-monthly if not. And you have a self-study course that I'm building, which is over 111 videos or 120.
It's a lot of content.
It's a lot, and it's ever growing. And in between that, as you know, as in the book, you have exercises to do. And you have your self-reporting workshops that you can put in there. There's case study things that we're going to do that I can then add to yours and kind of keep track of everything. And it's all to build up this super efficacious therapy model. The very final part of this, which is not going to be released till later this year, is that there will also be financial incentivization for people. So if you come to work on my course and you do all of your work, I'm actually going to pay you to do your therapy. And I won't go into the metrics, but we have 4 verticals of how we're going to fund that.
Wow.
But I want somebody in, you know, South America who's really, really struggling, their currency's completely ruined, to be able to earn money doing something that's bettering themselves, hence bettering their family, hence bettering society, and then also be able to turn that into real world money that they can then use in other countries in a stable currency. So that's the direction I'm going.
Interesting model. That sounds great.
And we happen to be in Nuanu now, which is something that I will be working with. I'm not saying.
Yeah. I mean, this is. I mean, it's an amazing place. This Nuanu place, in Bali, in Canggu. It's like what? It's like an art. How would you even describe this place? It's so
something like a. I can't remember how they say it. It's like a natural living. I can't remember. It's something about basically getting back to our roots and promoting that wellness, but also creating the world and the life that everyone would feel better with.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. Yeah. What's your project called, Murray?
So it was originally called The Few, based on Churchill's thing of never have so few done so much for so many, because I really do believe, as the sign said, world peace lies within. But it is going to be called The Path to Purpose now.
That's I love it. Oh, you're on the right podcast.
There you go. It lines quite nicely, doesn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. Because I mean, that's, just your whole story there, like, having corporate, being big time LA, Porsche 911, having all the things, living the life, and then realizing it's not for you, and then you're kind of finding your way back to purpose. I just think there's so many people around the world, like I'm meeting them all the time, people that have had big corporate jobs, they're burnt out, they can't keep up with the rate of change, they're over it, they want to go and explore other passions and interests, they don't know how they're to do it, where to start, they probably don't have the right support network for that. People probably telling them, nah mate, just have another beer. You don't need to go over there, How does somebody find, like, if they've got an inkling, like, what are the first steps you think of unraveling? I mean, this is probably a good start, doing something like this.
That's a great, I would say this would be a great thing to look at.
I'm gonna do this. I look forward to doing this.
No, I think honestly the biggest thing is to find the right community, and I think it's also the thing people struggle with the most. I think people really like, I was in LA for 7-8 years. It took me probably 4 years to find my group, and of that group there's 4 or 5 people in it that really I feel are aligned, and of that, like, how much time do we get to spend together that I now live in Bali, right? So I would say you can either on my site, you can go to murrayash.com. There we have a community.
Great name.
Even the .com. I was born with it. I would go and join that community. That would be like the first thing to find. I'm trying to do the groundwork of finding those people and bringing them together, and maybe they're finding me now is more the better way to put it. And introducing them to that, so you can access that group to find like-minded people. And we're going to do weekly group calls, and I'm going to do 2 different time zones.
What is this on, like Kajabi or school?
Yeah,
or
Kajabi, yeah. So that's going to be the first way, because I don't know, I feel that the support of a group, I have my story, you have your story, that together is already like 10 times the knowledge that we could have just given somebody by writing something down and go look at this, right? So if we can bring people together and share, I found something that did this, or somebody, here's the right person, or I know somebody that can help with that, or this person's going through something similar, maybe you can understand one another. I think that's really the first step. I would join up something like that, find it a conscious community.
Yeah. Good steps. I mean, I that's been the thing that's really helped me through, is like, leaving Australia when I went through all this, and finding new people who are kind of on this same journey, reclaiming themselves and getting back to purpose, which is amazing. Have you got anything coming up other than the book and the school or the Kajabi community? Is there anything worth mentioning in terms of
the 100 and something part course will be out in the next month.
Okay, so probably by the time this releases,
it should be out by then. Yeah, it's just down to editing time, but that should be there. I'm launching packages now, so there's like a monthly. Everything is made to make therapy as easy and as least obstacly as possible.
Yeah,
I don't know a better word to make up than obstacly.
Obstacly is good.
But people will come up with whatever excuse they can right before their session. Oh, I realized that there was a bird this morning and it was looking the wrong, and I don't know if that's a good sign. You know, they'll come up with something like, okay, everything is now monthly. You pay for a monthly subscription and you get your weekly session at the same time. You know where to be. There's also a 12-week and a 24-week package, which include a lot more, like access to the course and or the group and everything. There's also guided meditations on there that I'm releasing. There's going to just be this constant push of content for subscribers. So that's the big focus I'm doing. I will also be moving in the direction of doing events. So we're going to start with a couple of online events. And as of June or July, there's a couple of people from my course that I met that were putting together some in-person events, and also potentially, more likely so than not, going to be psilocybin or MDMA group therapy events.
Interesting.
The efficacy of healing with those is absolutely insane. The results that we're seeing from those, the ability to drop the fear from those substances, allowing people to revisit situations which their mind has blocked, is really fascinating to me.
Are they guided therapy using
guided
those?
Therapy, having doctors on site, talking people through, and then doing group work together as well with sharing. It's a really, that's the direction that I think this work is logically going in. Is this the compassion inquiry work, or is this something? We'll utilize a lot of that technique in there, but it's like our whole own thing. Really like my technique I call the path to purpose, because it's combining, you know, the clinical hypnotherapy stuff I've learned from Lynn Traub. By the way, check her out. She's absolutely amazing. Joseph's communication stuff that I learned, Gabor's compassionate inquiry thing with Sat Dharam, and her way of she has all these amazing techniques like GPS coordinates we use to understand what's going on inside you, and we're listening to certain keywords. Navigation, there we go. Yeah, there goes navigation again. I should have used that earlier. That would have been perfect. So yeah, it's really like developing my own thing. And again, every session I have with somebody, it adds like another facet, you know. It's just like, oh, there's another thing I can pull from there, or what did we learn from that? Yeah, you've got a really great bucket of tools, you know, with the way that you've gone about collecting your knowledge. It's amazing. Oh, that's cool. It's just the light there. But that might be a good sign to wrap things up. Is there anything that you would like to is there anything that we've missed out that's worth mentioning before we wrap this up here? I don't think so. I talk a lot and I forget what I say. As I said, I'd never listen back to these, so I've probably mentioned half this stuff. I'm going to make you some nice reels. Yeah, I'll listen back and see. My big thing is just say thank you for having me on. And welcome. I really like what you're doing with the community, because more people need to know that there's access. Like, people don't even know that they can reach out to someone like me for therapy. You know, they're just like, oh, I feel miserable and I guess I just have to deal with that. I was like, no, there's tools. There's people like us that have spent years and years of our life trying to do the same. Yeah, going through our own shit and trying to work it out. So get on board. Yeah. So reach out. You're not on your own, and there's people out there to facilitate this stuff for you. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Murray Ash. And thanks for listening. If you got this far, do follow Design on Purpose. You can find us on all the social media channels at Design on Purpose. And you can follow me at Rix Lee on Insta and at Captain Rix Lee on Twitter, on X. And I'll put Murray Ash's all his social media handles and everything that was mentioned here in the description. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Murray. Thank you. Bye.